talked about NPM, and you know, why it was great to have two guest lecturers. One who had a very, let's say, commercially oriented approach. We're going to call it the Deloitte approach, in deference to what Marco had in the bottom of the screen yesterday. And then you had a very different perspective, you know, the perspective of the user of those systems and what that looks like to advocate within those systems. And they're all valid agents or actors within those systems. But what was interesting about the perspectives that they brought was that Derek, for example, was fairly open to the idea of commercialization, or the commercial imperative being really important to innovation. Now that's a point of view that you can debate. You can either say, yeah, it is, or no, it isn't. But the thing is, it's a point of view. And if you understand the context of, you know, the objectives, say, of new public managers rather than traditional public service, if you want to put it that way, there's sets of values associated with that. They permeate into the systems that we all live with every day, that we all work in every day. And partly they can be quantified by things like what are your outputs, what are your objectives, and talk about beds as an example. Like bed blockers is another obvious one, you know, where people say, oh, there's people in beds in, you know, acute wards who should be elsewhere. And we're back again to assumptions then. You know, somebody says, well, people who are bed blocking should be elsewhere. It asks the question, well then where should they be, if that's the prescriptive assumption that we're working on? And if it's the case that they're there because they're not somewhere else, why is it that they're not elsewhere, in a place that's more suited to their care needs? And so there's a whole chain of thinking around the leadership and the philosophy that exists within the culture of an organisation, that it's really worth thinking about. If you don't think about it, you know, I mean, you can say, well, it is what it is, and that's the world we live in. That's fine up to the point where you try and do something different, something that have a positive influence on the system, and you run into some kind of brick wall. If you don't have the business language to negotiate with the owners of the systems that you're trying to improve, you're not at the races. You're not going to have a chance to deploy what it is that you plan to do. And the idea of this is that, you know, there'll be, I don't know, 10 or 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 projects, of which some will be perceived as, you know, kind of what they call, you know, kind of low-hanging fruit. They're obvious changes that would enable the health system in a very short-term way. Some will be strategic, they'll be more long-term in terms of reforms. But, you know, they'll be all on a timeline, hopefully, where we can say, okay, we're in, you know, within the first 2 or 3 years of Sláinte Care, because it aligns with the objectives of Sláinte Care, we can do this and this and this, and we can fund that, and we can put the resources behind it to make it happen. And then there's longer form ones that may not have an initial positive impact, but potentially will be more valuable to the system over time. So, without understand, and we talked yesterday about the difference between conformance and compliance, for example. So if you automatically, unquestioningly buy into the language of the system without understanding the meaning behind that language, you can't argue your case effectively. Now it so happens I know a lot about systems. I do some work for ISO and I do some work for the EU, so I know the difference between conformance and compliance. But there are equivalencies to that in the healthcare sector where you will absolutely be able to go, hang on a minute, when you said 47% complied, I would, you know, it's okay to take people to task on that and say, pull them up and say, well, what do you mean by that exactly? You know, question their rationale for coming up with that figure other than I saw it in the spreadsheet. And I'm not trying to get all kind of, you know, tinfoil hat kind of stuff here in terms of paranoia and so on. But, you know, we all work with the systems. The frustrations that we have for working within the systems is as a result of some context, some scenario that somebody somewhere set up, probably unintentionally, because my own belief is nobody malevolently acts within the system. You know, they do things for the best reason at the time that they did it. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to stay with them. So when you sit down and say, okay, here's my blank piece of paper and I want to put some kind of idea here of what I want to do, and you've already thought about this because you've already submitted kind of project ideas. But when you think, well, okay, how do I convert that good idea? Well, A, first, is it a good idea? And second, how do I convert it, assuming we've validated that it is a good idea? How do I design something that's usable? Then how is it designed? How is it developed? How is it deployed? How do we monitor it? How do we improve it over time? So there's all of there's a kind of trajectory there around that. But it starts with those first principles of assumptions that we make about the environments that we find ourselves in. The very fact that you guys are all here collectively on this master's course says to me there's a manifestation that there's something that you want to change within the systems you work in, and you think technology will help you achieve that. I mean, it could be completely wrong. But for somebody to go to the time and trouble of coming, I mean, you guys are doing a national tour of universities, as far as I know. To go to the time, trouble and effort of doing all that, it's not for the good of your health. You know, you're missing out on kind of family time.
But of everyone's health.
Everyone's got you know, maybe it's for the good of your health. Yeah, I'm not much my words, but there's other things you could be doing with your time. So obviously you assigned a priority and a value to this in terms of, I think this will be an avenue through to making something better somewhere in the world. And I say that's an assumption that you have about how you can do that. So to get back to this, and 6 ECTSs, because this is the thing. And of course the thing is, once you get this and it's corrected, it's not just me, it's two of my colleagues, Marcus Halpert and Claire Thornley, who have expertise in this area, are kind of co-correctors, external examiners that were. It's 6 ECTSs in the bag, which is great, out of the 90 that you need to get for a master's. So, you know, it's one little step on the journey that you can set it and forget it, as they say. So, 2,500 words, what does that look like? It's about 5.5, say 6 pages A4 double-spaced. Sorry, yeah, it's double-spaced, single-lined. And I can talk about that in more detail later. With a page at your kind of front page basically says that this is your own work and you know all that kind of good stuff, and then references and so on at the end. So 2,500 words. What is it? Well, the project report is written evidence of new knowledge and skills that you've acquired and tasks, processes and activities that you've undertaken while pursuing this part of their substantial health transformation project development. The report will reflect precise and concrete information about the different aspects of the practicum creating the project. And that starts with the theory. The why did we want to do this? And that starts off from an assumption that in patient booking systems, we find that there's huge inefficiencies due to did not arrive, so whatever it may be. Or, you know, I'm trying to think of another example now. In kind of home care package distribution, there's an inequity towards the Midlands, I don't know, whatever it happens to be. But, you know, there's no fair, transparent process for ensuring that home care packages are distributed across the system actively. Or, you know, that we find that through using an app that will help us track people's diet, that we can help diabetics lower their risk of what's Martin speak on diabetic foot amputations. That's the thing he probably doesn't know them, but you know, he thinks he can put them out within 5 years. So he's got a very strong kind of strategic or vision around that. So that's part of Martin's leadership. He's trying to align people around that. So what do we talk about? So it's the overview and requirements, essentially in the practical aspects. That really is the project bit. You know, this is the project that I want to do. And in 200 words, you can describe that. I love short sentences, short snappy sentences with simple English, like I said yesterday. Underpinning that then are the theoretical considerations that we talked about. The reason this is important is that in the context of the system that we have, which is budget constrained in so many ways, we find that working with consultancy organizations adds too many layers of complexity when you try to roll this stuff out. Or the legacy equipment that we have is insufficient or not fit for purpose when we try and do new things within the environment that we have. So what you're trying to do in that context then is kind of set the context for why the vision you have for your new project and your new system is better. And it's okay to say that. It's absolutely okay to say, we think this will be better because that's your hypothesis. And then you can, you know, give the reasons for that. Simply then, you know, the purpose of this system, project, application, whatever it may be, is to top 3 things. These are the outcomes that we expect. So we expect to be able to process patients at a rate of 10%, an increase in efficiency compared to what we do now. So again, it's all hypothetical at this point, so that's okay. What are the tasks that you need to do to ensure that you've got these outcomes in place? When you get to the end of the project development bit, you will come to some conclusions, which is a reflective piece really, which is over the course of this, while designing it, I learned that I didn't have enough information about this, I had to talk to my colleagues about that I had to talk to the guys in IT about something else. And understanding what that deficiency was enabled me to refine my work in whatever way it happened to be. And then recommendations for the future, and that really is, having gone through this iterative process once, this is what I plan to do next. Because we're still in the first third of your overall masters. So there's you don't know what's at the end. You can't know what's at the end. So it's essentially saying this is the plan for next steps, the recommendations. Now recommendations, of course, can also be, having tried this system in GPs in Kildare, we now think that there would be benefit in rolling this out in Westmeath, where there's a similar demographic, or the distribution of GPs is similar, or whatever it may be. So you're really looking to the future and showing that you've kind of synthesized everything that you've done here. Is anyone familiar with Bloom, Benjamin Bloom, 6 levels? Okay, Benjamin Bloom's the education theorist. He came up with a stack of how we build knowledge. And in essence, it starts off with knowledge at the bottom, so we acquire knowledge. The next level is understanding, so we comprehend what the knowledge tells us. The next level above that then is application, so we try something out. The next level above that is analysis, so having tried something out, what does that tell us about what we've learned, how we've understood it, and what we've applied. The next level above that is what's called synthesis, where we take that individual stack of things that we've learned and colleague Stephen likes to say, munch them together with all the other things that we've learned, all of the other experiences and knowledge that we have in our lives, so that you've got a broader mental model of how the world works. And the top level, 6th level, then is what's called evaluation or judgment, which is where you make a value or a rational judgment based upon everything that you've learned within that series of activities that you've applied. So when we talk to people at the undergraduate level, Cert, Dip, BSc, BA level, we expect them essentially to be able to acquire knowledge, comprehend the information, analyse it, and then to some extent apply it. At the master's level, at this level here, we expect the additional synthesis on top of that, and some evaluation. And then above that, it's really more about the holistic view of everything that you've learned. And as you've gone through your training as well, you've all gone through the same process too. So you've learned new things, you've tried to understand them in the context of your world, and you've applied them, and you've analysed what worked and what didn't, and so on and so on and so on. And that's how you build your confidence in any skill or set of activities. It doesn't matter if it's learning a musical instrument or running a process. So if you take that approach, set out what you've learned, show how you've understood it, show how you plan to apply it, plan for how you intend to analyse it, what will be your experiment based on your hypothesis, show how that fits in with your larger worldview. We talked about worldviews yesterday. And then in the conclusions and recommendations, and they can be the same thing, your judgment on what it looks like. Is it good, bad, or indifferent? And it's absolutely, in the academic context, to say, this experiment did not achieve the intended outcome I expected. We learn through those kind of failures. It's not a failure in the capital F, because that's the purpose of a hypothesis. It's to experiment with something. And if it doesn't work, okay, that's one way of doing things we know doesn't work. Now we're going to try something else. And you reiterate your hypothesis. So this short essay, and it really is very short, you'll find yourself going, damn it, I have 3,500 words. And how do I, you will, I promise you. How do I boil this down to 2,500 words? And if you think about it, so it's 250, 300 words for the intro, then the narrative of what you've done, and then a conclusion of maybe 200 or 300 words. So, like, 2,000 words, isn't it? 4 pages, A4 is not a lot of time or space to do that. So, I suppose my requirement is for you to kind of boil down a kind of a crucible what it is, the kind of the pure product of what your thinking is around this. But you will bring in stuff from what Mark talked about, and you'll bring in stuff from what you already know about the health service. So it's absolutely okay to talk about Sláinte care, where this fits within that context, because that's how it's going to be deployed and rolled out. So, and if you're doing that, you have to show what your understanding of Sláinte care is in a couple of sentences. From my place here in the world, Sláinte care is about this, and this. And under strategic objective 4, we plan to do, I don't know, whatever it is that we plan to do, make sweeties. So it's okay to bring in all that stuff. What you're doing here doesn't exist in isolation of anything else. And I'd be surprised if you tried to look at just what we do as a clean slice of this with nothing else. I think it'd be very, very hard. So I would take that broader perspective. Does that make sense? Okay, like I say, for those who aren't here, I'll talk about it again later. I've had a request as well to pull the pieces together about what we talked about yesterday and last time. So what I'm going to try and do is put that into a stack of rationality, we'll put it that way. So they say, okay, the leadership fits here, the strategy bit fits here, the design stuff that hopefully we'll do today, really hope we'll do today, fits here within this. Now, the context is really important because I think that the assumptions we all start with really inform everything that we do. And I know Martin's doing more the technical side of the transformation stuff in the help. As far as I know, he is. I haven't seen his module descriptor, so I'm kind of guessing. But have you had Piero yet?
No.
Oh, okay. Piero's a really interesting guy. He's Italian. Piero Formica. His surname might give you a clue. His family are very rich. They invented this stuff, unless that's MDF. But this family is Formica, as in the material, the manufactured material. So he lives in Bologna. He's a lovely guy. He's about, I guess he's in his mid-70s now. And he's got a really interesting perspective on innovation and innovation communities. And he's worked with everyone from Ferrari to Xeox, the leisure wear folks, through to Diesel Jeans. And these are all small family companies that exist in the north of Italy, and he works, and they're huge international brands.
I think he might be speaking at the next Digital Academy.
Ah, brilliant, okay.
I kind of remember something said about that.
Ah, fantastic. He's really, he'll give you a completely different perspective on what I'm talking about. I think that's the point, is to kind of, open up the kind of the space that's out there that you just, nobody has time to think about, because we're all kind of focused on our day jobs. Well, I guess
Sorry, just about the assignment. Does this have to relate to the project, the big project that we're doing?
Yes.
It does.
It will.
So we won't know.
And I was thinking, and I'm still struggling with this, because normally what we do, and you've done this before, Lorraine. Lorraine joined a workshop we did about April, May last year, where we got a group of her and like-minded projects who are people who are working on one project, and we got them together and we got them to do a series of design sprints through solutioning what it is that they needed to do. And that was fine, because we had a pretty good idea about what the goal was, whereas you guys don't. And rather than saying, okay, let's do some kind of makey up thing, which is meaningless and pointless, what I'm going to ask you to do later on when we do is kind of a short 3-hour sprint where you kind of look back on what your initial idea. We'll go through a couple of design processes for that at an individual rather than a group level, but they will be transversal skills so that you can then apply them in the group context when your projects are assigned. So they're not valueless. They will be useful personal skills that you can transfer into a different context. Now, what I'm also going to suggest is when your projects are assigned, that, if I can get kind of, I don't know, even 3 or 4 hours with you guys to do group sprints so you can sit down together and work as teams.
Yeah.
Because that's, I'm great, I'm glad you're up for it. Because it's completely different skills, completely different perspective. And it kind of works like this. People individually are great at ideating. So, I mean, there's 50 years of experiments on this. But if you put a group of people in a room and you say, here's a paperclip, let's brainstorm all the things we can do with a paperclip. We've all heard that one. If you do it in a group, it's the usual, the loudest voice is the one that's heard, the kind of the table thumper. People will go into what's called lurking mode, where they'll sit in the background, and they feel that because it's a group, it's okay not to contribute. And they might have the best idea, or the most appropriate idea for the context. So group brainstorming doesn't work, and there's loads of evidence that shows that. People are great at ideating. If you can put them in a space where they can come up with lots of different ideas and say it's okay to think wacky things, or what are perceived to be wacky things. I mean, who knew Velcro would have been developed from a thistle, but it was, that idea of hook thing, catching on somebody's clothes. And that saved the space program, the Apollo program, kind of kilos in weight in terms of putting, in a kind of a zero gravity environment, kind of sticking things to walls. So I'm not going to tell you where the idea for post-its came from. Actually, wait, some slugs. Slugs is the basis for post-its, because it's highly adhesive, but it's low tack. So ideas come from everywhere, and it's a classic innovation. Invention is where you make something new out of the blue, invent a telephone, whatever. Innovation, as we'll see when we define it in a little while, is taking existing resources and applying them in a new way. So they're two very different things. But people always think innovation is like Intel and spacesuits and white hats and clean rooms and all this kind of stuff. It's not at all. It's really, really simple things most of the time, applied appropriately. So that's the descriptor. That will be up there. If there's a lot of information in that, And it's written in a very academic fashion because it had to go through our APC, our Academic Programs Council, and also the one in UL, they had to approve it. This is the rubric I will use when I'm evaluating these, again, in terms of full transparency. I expect everyone to be up here. Down here. But, and again, there's a lot of information there, but it's very well graduated, it's very, very clear. The criteria are are listed in very understandable verbs and nouns, and there's no ambiguity, I hope. So, for example, the distribution curve in most people is at this level. There's the curve is kind of weighted for here. It's kind of between 60 and 75-ish, and then there's a few below that and a few above that. And what we would expect as a kind of baseline for that would be, if you just take the kind of the upward part of the distribution curve, would be very comprehensive, good understanding of concepts, supported by broad knowledge of the subject, is represented in the project development and design. And that key thing is really important. It's not the theory part of it, it's the project development and design part. Show, not tell, what you've done, so it's represented in the system. Moving up slightly to that, then mainly outstanding falls short on presentation and reading beyond the course, retains insight and originality typical of high quality first class work. Outstanding then falls short of ideal, but what doesn't? Either on aspects of presentation or in evidence of reading or thought beyond the course. Ideal then reports showing insight and originality and wide knowledge. And this is where you bring in your experience of the world and other stuff that you've done. And I refer to stuff that I do all the time. I look for examples everywhere. I've talked about examples yesterday from education and so on. So that's the rubric. And if you have any comments or queries about, I'm not sure where this fits within this. And I speak as somebody who recently did a 10,000 word essay. I didn't know if it was terrible or brilliant, frankly. It was just so binary for me. It was either here or it was up there. And it was, we all suffer from these anxieties, if you can put it that way. But you can always ask, I'm quite happy to say, yeah, that's a pretty good interpretation, but have you thought about ... And that's completely okay. And I would say that for any of the lecturers on the course as well. Some are probably more constrained because it's something very disciplined like data analysis, and there are strict rules around that, but then no one expects you guys to be data scientists, as far as I know. Am I incorrect in that assumption? No. Unless you're already a data scientist, in which case, So it's the big view. It's your situation in the world and how you relate to the world around you, and then all how the new information, all the new learning fits within that context, and all the bits fit together. So this will be up there. This will be up on Sulis probably on Monday or Tuesday, and it's completely transparent and it's completely clear. But again, if you feel there's any ambiguity in any of this language, or you're not sure what it should look like, but just my view is these things, chunk it up into 250 word blocks. Yeah.
References, like, do you want reference spaghetti, every line with 3 references in it, or is there like 6 core references that really define what we need, or what's the mix there? Because trying to introduce, not having reference material obviously is a deficit. Filling the page with everyone else's work and just referencing it doesn't seem to, ultimately doesn't have much value when you've got such a constrained space.
From my perspective, we use Harvard. Again, we probably need to check with what UL use. Harvard as well. Okay, so you should be able to download their specific Harvard referencing guide from their platform. I would try and keep away from, in such a short amount of space, from direct quotes if they're long ones. If you're quoting a phrase, that's okay, but there's loads of, certainly Sulis has good online tutorials about how to use referencing within the UL context, and that's what we have to use here. But the key thing, I would say, for an essay that long, or for that, if I was doing it, there'd be one A4 page, but that's me, and I know I tend to totally over-engineer everything. But I would expect, for example, if you're talking about assumptions, that you talk about Brookfield, if that's the context. Or you could say Brookfield says this, but Wenger says that. Or if you're talking about leadership, HBR, article, blah, blah, blah. Or some of the reports that I put up that I showed yesterday as well. just reference them in the normal way. I was going to talk about this later, but I might just do it now
So
actually.
sorry, you
Yeah.
should have read, or you've just referenced a whole page,
No, I mean, say you're talking about, you know,
Say
these-
that was too much stuff.
yeah,
Too much, sorry.
yeah, that's me. I over-engineer all this stuff.
Okay.
Totally. I mean, I overread all the time. I mean, it's part of my job to read, I guess. But I totally overread everything. And then if it's even a little allusion to something, because I'm just paranoid or turn it in, I shouldn't be, but I am, about turn it in, that, you know, I absolutely want to give credit for people's work. And of the 1 page of stuff that appears in an essay, there's probably the equivalent of 3 pages of stuff. Which referencing tool do you guys use? Or do you have one there? Okay. I use Zotero. I mean, they're all good. They all do the same thing. EndNote, and there's Vitex, and there's EasyRef, I think. I'm not sure which one. Most libraries, university libraries, have an attached referencing system, so you can use the one on the laptop. Or you can download your local kind of client version. The one I use is Zotero. They all do the same thing. I mean, you can see here that we use it for all of our IGI research, so this, and this is my personal stuff here, so this is my references to do with, actually, there's an source written assignment. Yeah, so there's my written assignment references list, so I tend to overread a lot, for example. But that's just me. What the great thing about any of these tools is that what they allow you to do very quickly when you're creating a reference is do something like create bibliography from this item. I don't know why that's turned off, but that's okay. Okay, if I go to my text pad here, and very quickly it'll just generate that as a, in this case, a Harvard referenced instance of whatever that thing happens to be. So then use the simple tools in Word, for example, to sort that and so on. So they're really good at managing stuff. They usually have a pretty good search function. You can tag stuff, you can bookmark stuff, you can do all that kind of things. They all do the same job, as I say. But it's really important that you show, that you differentiate between your ideas and the ideas of other people. That's the really important thing with referencing. Yeah.
So what exactly are you looking for in terms of the recommendations and conclusions in relation to the timeline for this assignment?
Yeah.
In parallel with the project that
Yeah.
you'll be doing?
So, over the course of the next 2 months or so, does anyone actually know what date someone's going to hand you these papers?
No.
And it's been pushed out of it.
Anyone knows?
Okay. And you're doing it at a complete vacuum?
Yes.
And I'll talk to Annette and Martin about this on Monday, that's really their problem. Could you say first, early March? I would say it will be based upon what you can do within a 2-month time frame in terms of designing and developing the work that you've done. So, I mean, it's between now and then, at some point, you're going to sit down and say, okay, what does this look like? What is the thing I want to improve? What's the application that I want to make better? What's the service that I want to improve? I'm assuming, again, I certainly hope so, because you need to, you need to be starting now. I mean,
And Michael, just on a practical point, if this moves to May and we now have 3 assignments due in May.
okay, well, I push to get it push back a bit, because I think that's unfair. If you've got no raw material to work with, it's unfair to ask you to complete an assignment just because of some academic deadline. And I'd absolutely be pushing hard on the door to say, sorry, these guys can't do this with the information that they have.
How should I know?
Well, yeah.
By your class rep?
Okay. That's really useful. Okay, so that, as far as they're concerned, that's their drop dead date. Okay. She can't read that. Okay, well, if that's the case, then you guys need to get your input into it. I don't know, again, I mean, I remember we did this before when we went through the design process of this course. Some people had a very predetermined view of what should be in the course. And I said, here's a list of all the modules, and there's about 20 of them. That's not realistic. So I brought it to the, we had a design workshop of all of the academics, essentially. We all came together and we designed the course collectively in terms of what our expertise was, what our specialism was, what was nice to have, what was neat to have, and so on. And we looked at the list. Annette was actually number one in it. She looked at the list and she tore it in half and she threw it over her shoulder.